Bun găsit la un nou interviu Humanitas, sunt Cătălin Striblea și îmi face mare plăcere să vă prezint astăzi cartea Cei mai frumoși ani din viața lui Anton, scrisă de Norris von Schirach, care este și invitatul meu la această lansare, dacă vreți. Vom vorbi despre acest volum apărut în România, dar cu o poveste cât se poate de rusească și, de ce nu, chiar europeană. Norris von Schirach este un autor german, după cum bine v-ați dat seama, educat în vest, dar trăitor în estul Europei, mulți ani în Rusia și de ceva vreme în România, iar povestea sa este una absolut fantastică. Vă recomand cu încredere. Este povestea unui tânăr occidental care trăiește la Moscova și se îmbogățește în primii ani 90, odată cu căderea comunismului. Dialogul nostru va fi în engleză, așa că dați-mi voie să-l salut pe Norris von Schirach și să-i spun Welcome, Mr. von Schirach, to Romania, welcome to Humanitas and to our interview. Very glad to meet you.
Thank you for having me.
I already told to our listeners and to our viewers, you are born in Germany, educated in the Western Europe. You lived for a while in America, Western Europe, but in the beginning of the 90s, you went to Russia to work, or just to work, or to study, or to be part from a new world. What was the reason?
Yeah, like a little bit like the hero, anti-hero of my book, Anton. I was sitting in New York when the wall came down, when the Iron Curtain finally disappeared, and I wanted to go there. This was more interesting than anything else. And I decided instead of going to America, like I'm born in Munich, in Bavaria, and a lot of my friends from university went to the States. And I thought the new thing to do is to go to the Wild East. And so I learned Russian. I didn't have any connections to Russia. And I was just fascinated, and I wanted to be part of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity when everything is destroyed in one moment. I speak about 91, the implosion or explosion of the Soviet Union. And I thought something new will happen, and I have to be part of it.
So everybody, all the readers who are listening us right now will say, or will question this, is this an autobiography?
Oh no, it is not, absolutely not. I'm not this Anton. But sometimes I would like to be like him, to be honest. The way he's sliding through these 10 Yeltsin years, 9 Yeltsin years, sometimes I'm jealous, and yeah.
Let's say like this, Mr. von Schirach, this is a book about a young German, a young guy from Germany, who is in Russia at the beginning of the 90s, making a huge fortune for an oligarch and living during one of the biggest crises of the world. During the time he was becoming very, very rich, the world near him was collapsing, totally collapsing. And I'll invite you to tell us how do you see this book, and just tell us a little bit about the subject.
Yes, a couple of years ago, I looked back, and Russia has changed dramatically since the 90s, and today it's almost not recognizable. I was in Moscow not long ago, and it's a different place today. And not everything has changed to the worse, by the way. The town is much more livable today, cleaner, lighter, and so on. About the politics, this is on a different piece of paper, of course. However, the 90s to me explained a lot, you know. So it was a liberal time. It was, you had all the glory and all the abysses. About 150 million people lost everything after 91. The inflation made all their savings worth nothing. They lost their pensions. They either lost their jobs or they didn't get paid anymore. But at the same time, there was a lot of optimism, of liberal ideas. People felt free and had all these hopes, and it was tragic. It is like life plays sometimes, but it was not only depressing, it was also full of great big feelings that something new will come. And freedom was the word, yeah, the most important. I guess similar to Romania.
Yeah, in a way, it was similar. What I've read here in the book is similar in many ways to Romania, but the shock to the Romanian society was not so big as you describe it in your book. So my next question is, why did you choose to construct your novel like this? Because you have kind of two stories, the story of Anton, who is young, successful, he's going to be rich, and also you have the story of the people of Russia. Actually, Anton is looking to the people of Russia and seeing the collapse of their lives. You could have chosen, for example, to just to present the life of those people, which is the main part of your opera, but you choose to have two parallel stories. Why did you do this?
I always like in literature that an outsider is being thrown into a situation and he sees the world, the situation through the eyes of an outsider. In this case, an expat who comes to Russia. He's entering Russia like through a wallpaper door. His idea about Russia is basically he extracted from 19th century literature, you know, from Dostoevsky and Tolstoy and Goncharoff and Lermontov, of course. And he doesn't know too much about modern Russia, but he meets a lot of characters from these books, these internal characters, and he himself is a bit of a romantic, and he's a bit of a Byron character. So he felt bored in the Western world in New York. He was disillusioned from his job as a controller for a big financial institution. And he goes there to find something he couldn't find in the West. So this burned out star of the former Soviet Union is the last place you expect somebody to become happy. But that's what he becomes over the years. And he dives into that and he sees it like with a hidden small camera. Yeah. He's not a moralistic person. He tries not to judge people. And the comical situation, the tragical situation, and so on, they appear and they disappear like through a camera. That's what I tried to do. Yeah.
I can make a bet anytime that part of the scenes and situations you can read in the book, in your book, are lived or you heard about them there. I don't know. There are some tragic situation about poverty. There are the comic ones. There are ones which are desperate. About comic ones, humorous ones. There is that one which the book starts with the bear at a party. This is not imagination, I suppose. There should be some bear in a Russian party somewhere in some parts of Russia.
Yeah, actually, I witnessed all these situations, except one, I think. I had to be a bit careful with the names, and I had to change places because there are personal rights. But who lived in Moscow back in the 90s and reads the book, he knows more or less who is who and which characters are there. What I liked, well, let me put it like that. As I said a couple of years ago, I thought this is already a lost world. The world today is different in Russia, and I thought somebody should keep this atmosphere, just conserve it for one. Back then, I read a lot of Proust, and if you want to say so, I was also à la recherche de la temps perdu. Yeah, I wanted to. This will never come back. And how did people speak? How did they dress? What was their humor? You know, how did they spend the night in clubs? And what was the spirit of the time? The zeitgeist. And because it's so strange, it's 20 years past, and it's all lost, you know, maybe for the better, you know, don't get me wrong. But sometimes as a writer, you want to keep a certain picture, maybe a smile of somebody or a strange conversation. And
what was the most shocking thing you ever witnessed in those years?
Oh, there were a lot of terrible things. I wouldn't say one particular thing. I don't like superlatives, but the poverty was shocking. The old people who were completely disillusioned. Another thing is in the book. I think 80% of 14-year-old girls wanted to become prostitutes, you know, and things like that. They stick with you because you see what can happen to a society in such a vacuum. The Soviet Union imploded, and there were no values anymore. Which a lot of people turned to the church, but not all of them. And others just had as a new religion the market or a certain cynicism about everything. And
one of the most beautiful things in your book, Mr. von Schirach, is that this is almost an anthem dedicated to Russian women. You have one chapter or a few pages about the Russian women's, and one of the most striking scenes is that one at the coal mine in Siberia, where your character, Anton, says some poems in Russian about the Russian women. Very, very impressive. And you said at some point in this book that Russia will be saved if women's took the lead or be in charge or have different positions. It's very interesting.
The German title of the book is, the translation is Pale Heroes. Heroi Palis, I think.
Heroi Palis, yes. I have noticed, and it was one of my questions, but please.
And of course, the male heroes, they were pale, and the real heroes were the women, who had to clean up all this mess their society left them after 91. Sometimes, by the way, I thought about German women who had to rebuild Germany after 45, after everything was bombed, and they started with their bare hands to get bricks out of the rubble, and we call them Trümmerfrauen, women who had to rebuild something man destroyed, with their enormous stupidity, ideological stupidity and whatever. And so the true heroines of this book are certainly these amazing women.
Yeah, and you described them very, very beautifully, and I invite everyone to read your book, at least from this perspective. Also, what I have learned from your book was a thing about the Russian attitudes towards exterior, towards other countries. At some point, you have a long conversation, your character has a long conversation with the former KGB, or not former, KGB officer, and he was explaining the way Russia sees other countries. And this is very important for all of us. Maybe you noticed this in Romania. My question is, and if you can explain to us, how does Russia or Russians, ordinary Russians, see us, the rest of the world, the rest of the Europe?
I have to be a bit careful with such things what I say, but generally speaking, these KGB people were very, very cynical, and they looked. First of all, they didn't have a high opinion about their own people, what they called Sovietsky Человек, a Soviet type of man or woman. And if you take Germany, for example, Germans want to be loved as a nation. Russians want to be feared. It's a very important difference, and there is certainly lately coming out of the Kremlin, again, a very chauvinistic view about the world, what is important in the world or not. And it is obviously that only the powerful are important, So, and it's not about good or wrong or certain human values we hopefully keep in the West, but you have a tendency in Russia to be very cynical about how the world works, and who is the strongest? At the moment, it is China and the US, of course, and the rest doesn't really count a lot. There's maybe a little bit of Brussels. European community is a midfield minor player, but in fact, it's power, and not much else counts. And saying this, of course, we also have to mention the civil society in Russia, who have a completely different picture about things, who actually adore us about our freedom and our freedom of speech lately, again. And these people are unhappy. They leave Russia by the millions. The most talented people leave Russia at the moment because of this politics. The brain drain is terrible. And what you have is an old apparatchik way of thinking about their own people, but also about the rest of the world. Yeah, maybe.
Your novel remembered me in a way of Svetlana Alexievich's work, Second-Hand Time. She described, maybe you've read it. She describes like a reporter the dramas of the people in Russia. You have a story here which is very, very powerful. Sometimes it hurts you. I have to say this, but in another way, there is the thing. I never saw it. I read about it. I heard about it, but never described so in detail. It's about the luxury, the other side of Russia. The luxury of the richest of the rich, and you describe it, and you have some fantastic scenes. But I refer to the author, to you actually. What was the most luxury scene you ever saw in that kind of Russia?
They all had their own planes to start with something. I don't know. They threw good parties, I have to say. The parties were legendary. I never saw such wine again. But also, I remember once they got bored somehow at 6 or 7 in the morning, and one said, look, in a couple of hours is the final of Wimbledon. Why don't we all go? And he had tickets, but he still didn't decide whether to go. So we all took his plane and watched the final in Wimbledon and things like that. But just to get bored again there. So it was cool to be bored, and very strange situations. But everybody knows these stories about Russians at the Côte d'Azur or in the Moritz, and what strange things these people are doing most of the time. However, we have to say that the oligarchs of the 90s, they are basically all gone, or they cooperate with Putin. So now you have crazy rich former KGB buddies of Putin. Yeah, so it changed a little bit. I think the old oligarchs were more colorful than these gray apparatchiks today who run the place and have the money.
We have here a fantastic book, I have to say, to our listeners and to our viewers. And I don't want to spoil for them the reading, but I have to ask for myself, for everybody, in the end, why these are the best years of Anton? Because when he left from Russia, Anton was still young, was rich, was the life actually for many people starts in the 30s, the 40s, and yet he says, I think these were the best years of my life. And his life was not easy, let's say, to everybody who read the book.
Yeah, I think the most important thing was these years were not boring. And he came to Russia because he felt an emptiness. Like these characters from Russian literature in the 19th century, like Onegin or Raskolnikov or Besukhov in War and Peace. People who lived well, but something was missing. There was nothing touched them anymore, deep inside. And Russia touched them, the destiny of these people, the friendship, but also the chaos, the danger. And he found what he was looking for. That's why he thought these are the best years of my life. You're right, he's still young, and the second part I just finished.
So your second novel is a sequel for this one, because as I understand, you just finished your second novel, and we prepare for publication, yeah?
In Bucharest, yeah.
In Bucharest.
Yeah, this is a trilogy. From the beginning, I wanted to cover basically the last 30 years, where almost everything has changed. And these were the first 10 years. So the next 10 years will be from 2000 to something like 2010. And it is playing in Central Asia. Central Asia is very interesting, places like Kazakhstan, because what happens right now in the world with the rising power of China happened there 10 years before. This was the overture of this immense Chinese rising power. And Anton finds himself in Kazakhstan, in Almaty, and these are the next couple of years.
So next time for the second part, we'll have to do a new interview. And I would love to read your book, because this one, I loved it very much. It's very entertaining. It's very entertaining. I have to tell the people that it's very entertaining. And as I reckon, as I understand, I think, and this is the last question, actually, you read all the Russian classics in Russian, because you, that was my sentiment, yeah.
My Russian used to be pretty good, yeah, and I read a lot of literature in Russian, yes, when I was there, yeah.
I think because it seems to me you understand them very, very, very well, and their souls, even their dead souls, and you have to see in the book why I say dead souls, because this is important for the book.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Gogol.
There is a fantastic scene which I recommend for everyone about Gogol. Thank you very much, Mr. Norris von Schirach. Hope this book will be a big success, and I hope to read the second part very soon.
Thank you so much for having me.